Taliaoa, and welcome back to Breaking Waves. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. On today's show, we have a very special guest. He is the chair of the Northern Region of the Pacific Blues, which is the Pacific part of the National Party, a business entrepreneur, political commentator, and also the director for NZMA. We have John Loau here to join us on the show to talk about some things going on in politics right now and many other things that we enjoy talking about. Thank you, John, for joining us on our show. How are you this afternoon?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Taliaoa, and yeah, great to be here.
I understand you've had a busy morning. You were at Polyfest. How was it?
Yeah, it's great. Today was the opening ceremony, flag raising, and the Pōwhiri for Polyfest's 49th year. Yeah, it's come a long way from 4 schools. And, you know, now I think some like 69 schools are competing, some 8,000 students from across the region, the largest of its kind. Probably the most technical demonstration of our culture by diaspora that live here. And so yeah, it's great. So today's the first day. The diversity stages are on.
Awesome.
So I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of it this weekend.
Did you try out any of the food before you came?
I did. I snuck off to a few things. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, but I think I'm just going to have a pork bun.
Yeah. So you wear a lot of different hats, and I know you've been you had an interview yesterday with PMN to address some of the things happening with the National Party. And I just wanted to say first, I'm a big believer in communicating and engaging with parties that we agree with and don't agree with. So these kind of discussions are very important because if you're not in the space or you're not at the table to eat, someone's gonna eat you. Something won't go right. So sure. I'm really glad that we're here in this space because there has been a lot of questions from the public about the National Party. Is it representative of Pacific people? Who do we talk to? I have issues that my people face. Who do I go to in the National Party to to get answers or to help create policies? Could you give us a bit of insight on how someone would go about doing that?
Yeah, definitely. So with the National Party and as a whole, like any other political party, we're a broad church. And so, we're governed by the values of the party that actually brings us all together. And so that's what helps corral so many people, whether they're Pacifica or Palangi or from China or wherever else. So that's what roots us together as a political party and members of the party. And then, of course, we have our culture as Pacific people. And the National Party has created the Pacific Blues. So that's the arm of the party where we will gravitate towards as Pacific people around policies and issues that affect us more directly and more broadly when the party and the government is proposing different policies for the country as a whole. So if anyone's interested in joining the Pacific Blues, we're accessible like everywhere else. We're definitely available online, the various Facebook platforms and Instagram, and those things. So all they got to do is just search up the Pacific Blues National Party and just flick us a message, and we're happy to invite them along to come to a bunch of meetings and things.
There may be reasons why Pacific people aren't quite drawn to National Party in regards to politics. We've predominantly voted Labour for a long time, and I was just wondering, if more Pacific people were to come and engage with the party, is it very welcome? Do you reckon at this moment in time there needs to be more work done in that space to be more welcoming to Pacific peoples, or should Pacific peoples be more assertive and ambitious in that space?
So when I walked into the National Party, they welcomed me for all of me, not just, oh great, we need a Samoan, we need another Pacific person. I think that's very key and very important that, when people come in and join the National Party or wherever they end up lining themselves up, that they are welcomed wholly as for who they are. So that's been my experience, and many of the other members who have joined the National Party and the Pacific Blues group, that's been our experience is coming into that space. So, again, it's finding that commonality through the values of who brought you here, what's of interest to you, and what drives your decision making and your thinking around things. And so it is the party values, safe community building, safe communities, personal responsibility, reward for hard work, and the enterprising skills and all of those things that drive people like myself and others towards the National Party.
Awesome. And so I'm asking you these questions because there needs to be an understanding of how things work internally in a party, because that's what drives the policies that
Yeah.
are being discussed by MPs, is the people who are involved in the party bringing these issues to light. And so we've seen in the news a lot of things that actually affect Pacific Islanders directly, and Māori as well.
Yep.
We've seen the Kāinga Ora homes conversation, kicking out violent tenants or tenants who are unsafe for their neighbors. And we've also seen some discussions around cutting free school lunches. So statistically, Pacific Islanders, we sit at the bottom for a lot of statistics when it comes to financials, social well-being, health. These are issues that will directly affect Pacific Islanders. So their experiences and what they go through is important. How do you make sure in the National Party that those experiences are being heard in the National Party?
Yeah, definitely. So we'll tackle the
Kāinga Ora homes, for example.
So Chris Bishop, in his letter of expectation to Kāinga Ora, is what I would expect not only any government official but any landlord, right? Because there's a duty of care and a responsibility that you as a landlord have to have for your tenants, but also tenants. And what we're seeing, and we've been seeing it for many years now, is that we have people who are beneficiaries of our state home system, and no fault of their own because of their current situations and things. And so to alleviate those pressures, they've been allowed to stay in our Kāinga Ora homes, and they're being disruptive through, destroying property, not meeting their rent expectations and all the other things that are around it. And granted, there are social issues that are around addressing those areas. What we were saying, and at least what many of us have been saying, and from the Pacific community have been saying for a long time, is, geez, why doesn't Kāinga Ora do something about this person living next door? So I think that's really what the aim of the letter was for Kāinga Ora, to say, hey, you have these tools, you need to use them to engage and deal with disruptive people. Once we can just engage these disruptive people, we can figure out how many more intensive services need to be surrounded by them. We'll probably come to find out it'll be a small number of people.
Yes, I think it is a small amount of people, and I think it's being overhyped, or people are talking about it in context, way out of context. Like they're saying, we've got to save, money on our economy. This is taking the taxpayers' dollars. But if these people who are troubled, people who are abusive or violent, usually are in a pattern of addiction, or they grew up in a very traumatized home. So then if these people get kicked out of their homes, and which Kāinga Ora is trying to provide a safe home where they can heal from their trauma. But if they don't, they could be taken to prison for acts of violence. But that's actually more expensive. Would you agree that would be more expensive than... So what would be the plan for that?
Well, each of those circumstances will definitely have to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. But the failure we're seeing here is Kāinga Ora not engaging these individuals. So we look at like rent arrears, for instance. Between 2017 and today, it's gone from $1 million to like 28 some $1 million. That's a phenomenal amount of money for a landlord not to be chasing. And if it's a financial literacy issue or a lack of funds coming in because they don't have the skills to get off of the benefit and then and get into high paid jobs, or maybe they are in employment that they're just not in the right employment.
Right.
We can't identify what these issues are if we're not looking at the symptoms.
Right.
So we're just
right.
And so at least the feeling that people get is that Kāinga Ora isn't doing anything. And so we have expressed at the Pacific Blues, up the chain, through our advice and just through our feedback, is that since you're the minister of Kāinga Ora and with housing as part of your portfolio, can you please ask this landlord that many of us rely on to alleviate pressure? Because I'm a beneficiary of being in a Kāinga Ora home when it was under Housing New Zealand when I was a child. So can you do something to ensure that these tenants are not only dealt with but are provided whatever support they need? And sometimes that means we need to remove these people from these homes because we have a massive waiting list. The waiting list that exploded under the last 2 terms in the last administration for whatever reasons, and whether people agree or not. At the end of the day, people aren't numbers, they're people waiting to get in. So people aren't going to do their bit by keeping the home intact and making sure it's clean and paying their rent on time, and they're going to be disruptive and break the law and just really frankly be idiots. We need to remove them from those homes, put people in there who need it more than them, and then figure out what to do with this group of people. And maybe we just need to sidestep them for a sec,
Yeah.
and just say, hey, in order for us to put you back in a home, we need to kind of step by step this. But again, it is the feeling that, KO is not doing these things, and that could just be a structural issue. Maybe KO is not structured.
It probably is a structural issue. So you're going to take, well, not you, but the National Party will, encourage or support taking people out of their homes if they are disruptive and violent towards their neighbors and towards the home. So do you have any insight so far on the plans? Or will that be a kāinga order decision, or will that be a minister guided decision?
Yeah, so the minister's made his intentions clear through his letter of expectations, and obviously the tools that have been outlined that already are at their disposal. That is an operational thing for a kāinga order to figure out. There's some very smart people working there. I've got lots of family who work there as well. And it's just a matter of that agency itself deciding, okay, we need to address these issues, and how well do we, how well are we equipped to deal with these, and if they're not well equipped to handle it, then I would expect them to go back to the minister and say, here is the gaps that we have found, and we need resourcing around this, in order to help them. Or, hey, look, here's our core responsibility as this particular entity, kāinga ora, and maybe we shouldn't be handling these areas. Maybe another agency should be brought into into play, MSD and any other services. So that's where one would expect kāinga ora to move forward, and I'm sure they're moving forward.
Absolutely.
In that capacity.
And we can't get to that position until they start moving their operations and systems and things like that as well. So thank you for sharing those points with us. I can honestly understand why people would get lost and emotional in these conversations, especially when they're seeing like 10-minute clickbait pieces on TikTok and Instagram. So it's very important to look into the technical aspects of these kind of things to have a full understanding of it. And this would also apply to our cutting free school lunches. So I've seen it. Everyone's saying they're going to cut school lunches altogether. Kids are going to starve. What are we going to do? You guys hate the poor. You national people hate the poor. Your ula fala is a diversity tick. So cutting free school lunches. I was raised in South Auckland. If I had free school lunches, me and all my friends would have had the best time. We wouldn't even care what it tasted like. But I remember in primary, we'd be sharing one pie and we'd be hiding our food. We'd be hiding by the tree. Or if we see someone go to the tuck shop, they're like, this person's got lunch, let's follow them. And it's funny when I talk to people my age about it. We didn't get free school lunches. We had free school breakfast. So we had to be at school at 7 a.m. if you wanted access to breakfast. So me and my siblings would be like, we got no food. Let's go. Let's go get breakfast. They got cereal, Vegemite, peanut butter.
Oh, Vegemite. Okay. Not a fan yet.
So free school lunches, if I was in school, I would have been one of those kids who benefited from it. And so a lot of people are watching the news and they're kind of scared. They're like, this is actually really helpful for my family. And now, I'm a mom. I look after my child by myself. Free school lunches is like, it's kind of like if I'm on the go, running, busy, I understand, at least she has lunch at school. I don't care if it's yuck. I was running around trying to get a bite of a pie when I was But a lot of parents are concerned that cutting free school lunches. But then if you dig a bit deeper, you'll see it's not about just like, we're not going to cut this off because it's a waste of money. There's points of improvement that needs to be made. So what is the National Party's current stance on cutting free school lunches?
So it's about efficiency, I suppose, and targeting, and means testing and targeting, and ensuring that free lunches, if they need to be provided for a group of people, then that they go where they need to go. But I think if we take a full step back, what we have heard over the last maybe couple of months now from our current government leaders is that the economy is very fragile. The state of our nation is fragile, is to quote Christopher Luxon. And according to the three coalition partners, is they've inherited financials that are not designed for growth. And if we look at it and kind of think, well, why do we need to deliver free lunches for these children? Well, that's because mom and dad, or whatever the combination of the family makeup is now in the family in the family nucleus, is that they financially are not in a position to do that for the kid. It's not an issue of like, I don't have time to make lunch, go to school and eat lunch at school. No, that's really an issue of, I can't actually afford it. That's why I need someone else to try to feed my kid, because I can barely make enough money to keep the lights on and everything else because of inflation and all these other things. So you know, when we look at the discussion around free lunch, and it gets really emotional very quickly, as I tell them, I said, like, this is a wider conversation about the economy. The economy is not in a position to ensure that you go from low income to a higher income bracket to a middle income, and to see that growth. If we can't, you know, because at some point parents would like to go, I'd like to decide what my kid is fed, you know, so there's a massive piece in the economic space that needs to be addressed, so that people's incomes can grow, so that parents can make those choices for the kids. So that's the first thing. Second thing, when we're talking about you know, school lunches, you know, I've heard it from nieces and nephews from all across you know, Auckland, who are recipients of this, is that, you know, some are from families in our family who are financially okay, they don't need it, but they're just shoved a lunch, going, here, take it, because our school is funded for it. So that tells me that there's an inefficiency in terms of that, and so then you get wastage. And then you look at what's being delivered, and you're kind of going, oh, some schools are reporting that they're getting this fantastic meal, and other schools are getting this cold, you know, whatever they're getting it. And so you're kind of going, yes, we need to feed these kids, and yes, we want to make sure that their stomachs are full, but, you know, kids are kids. So they'll look at a piece of sandwich and go, oh, not even that. I mean, I don't like Marmite or Vegemite. If I could outlaw it, I would. So, you know,
I don't like Marmite or Vegemite too, but it was the only eating option.
Yeah. So if that was a sandwich and it was put in front of me, I'm not going to eat it. No matter how starving I am as a kid, I'm just not going to eat it, because I'm a kid and I'm stubborn, and that's what I'm going to do. So, you know, so there is that discussion piece of, if we are delivering food and we means test it, and we decide, well, now we figured out how much needs to go where. It probably is a good conversation to have of what we feed them. Yes, they got to be nutritional content value and all those other great things, but we definitely need them to put it in their mouths and eat it and have
absolutely. And I think, and I agree with you that is something that we need to improve. I had a discussion late last year with Lesiali. She is she's in the education space as well, and she said it doesn't need to be cut, it just needs to be improved. There are NGOs or new businesses that were formed who were capping this funding, and they had never made lunches before, but they were like, hey, look, we can get 150x salary on top of my other 20 salaries that I have. So Lesiali made it a point that, like you said, there's things that need to be improved. She wouldn't even eat some of the lunches she's seen at the schools that she's visited, and I didn't see anything wrong with trying to improve those systems. But you know, I guess a lot of Pacific people are just concerned that those concerns aren't being voiced within the National Party, and then when they're seeing headlines, free school lunches are going to get cut, there's this whole misunderstanding, like they're just going to take away. And like you were saying, our experiences, if parents can't afford to provide for their kids or choose what they want for lunch, like, what are we going to do?
Yeah, definitely. I think if anything, the Minister of Regulation, that's David Seymour, the Honorable David Seymour now. So,
how's the bro?
Hopefully he's recovering okay after his fall. Not sure if it's because he went to church or hadn't been to church for a while, but I don't know. It's all right, David. You know, he was the main proponent in pushing efficiency around, and he's one of the ones that probably the main one who identified these particular areas. So, you know, because it's a coalition, and it's not a group that's leading a coalition, it's an actual equal coalition among the three, is that you know, he's responsible for regulation and efficiency and finding those things. And so when I hear him say this is a waste of time or this is a waste of money, you know, I hear, well, okay, great, that's fine for you to describe it that way. What do you need to see to ensure that it is delivered well? Because it's clearly something that has been identified for decades now, and even at the National Party, we believe, yep, okay, cool, if this has to be done, you know, can we deliver this perfectly well enough to ensure that money is not being wasted and money doesn't end up with providers that are just, you know, clipping a ticket for no actual reason that they should be having it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've spoken about kainga ora homes, and we've also spoken about free school lunches. At the end of the day, in a perfect world, we would love to have a mum and dad who can afford, you know, providing for their families, but the current situation in New Zealand, it's very hard to survive in Auckland for those who are earning middle or to average income. At the end of the day, there will always be a list of people waiting for a home. At the end of the day, there will always be hungry kids. So as much as we want to imagine a utopia where there's, you know, parents who are well afforded, who can afford their families, these are issues that will always exist. What is National's plan, you're going to address the housing, like the amount of people who are on that list to get a home? Are they going to invest in building more homes in the near future? We know that landlords have gotten tax cuts.
Yep.
And what do you personally believe is the solution outside of the party politics?
Yeah, so probably what's outside of party politics is probably really similar to what's within, in that we need an economic environment that allows lenders, which are the banks, the ability to say, here's money for you to borrow. And on top of that, we also need the lenders to have an economic environment for them to say, and here's the structure and how you can qualify for that. And that's probably one of the bigger challenges, is that at the end of the day, the government doesn't have a checkbook to start saying, here, I'm going to co-sign this house for you, because at the end of the day, the banks are going to finance these things. So
do you think this is a matter of urgency, though, for the government? And do you think that response is reflective of that urgency? Yeah,
definitely. So if you look at Chris Bishop's call saying, hey, look, if these people who are abusing their position, in their space in a kainga or a home, they're not going to take it seriously, then move these people in. We're going to put other people in that desperately need it. So I think it's one of the more visual kind of steps. The party's been very clear in terms of the financial mechanisms to ensuring getting inflation under control. So they've been very clear with the Reserve Bank governor, telling the governor, hey, look, this is what we want you to focus on, drive inflation down so we can get unemployment down. That's what they want them to focus on, instead of everything else that really has nothing to do with inflation, because the official cash rate inflation is really what drives our ability to spend our money. If our dollar cannot stretch further than it is now, then we're going to continue to have these problems. So it feels like it's like real large stuff, but it actually is important stuff that the party is really focused on, ensuring that the economic environment is stabilized, so we don't have to keep borrowing. But more importantly, how do we ensure that there's confidence in the private sector so that the private sector can grow again? Some of the solutions have been, well, let's just raise minimum wage. Let's just raise people's wages to the living wage. Well, you can do that, but as a private business person, that's additional costs that I have to, that I will have to deal with because the law said so. But my ability to increase my revenue stream to keep up with that isn't happening.
Yeah.
So how long do you think I will last before my business collapses? And then whose fault is it?
And then everyone loses their jobs if the business collapses. So there's a thing to take into consideration.
Yeah, so though we would like to get as many homeowners in as home as possible, I think really the narrative is everyone should have the ability to be in a position to work towards being able to buy their first home if they so choose. But we should also have an environment where if you want to rent for the next 30, 40 years, then that should be a financial environment that you should be able to do as well.
Absolutely.
So you look at places like Australia, United States, and other places. People move in, they rent the place, they're there for like 20, 30 years. The average person lives in a space for 3 years and then they have to move. Why? Because the economic environment says, I need you to flip your house for you to make just a bit more capital gain, so that way you can get into another house that gives you more capital gain, but just so that you have financial cushion. But anyone who's doing that is being painted as, oh, you're just flipping to make it and to get rich, thinking, oh, I'm not sure if you actually know how the numbers work. It doesn't really work that well. So I think I've got family members who are not interested in buying a home. They just want to rent, but they want a safe renting environment. And so those are the things that need to be stabilized really well in concert, and at the same time with giving the business community the economic environment so the business community can stabilize and then grow and then attract more investment that comes abroad so that we can grow our economy. We're 5.5 million people. Yeah. It probably should be about 15 million.
Absolutely. Thank you for answering that. I had a good conversation with two of my two amazing girls that I met. Yep. One is from RNZ. She runs the Pacific Waves podcast.
Yep.
And the other one has worked previously for the New Zealand Herald. Yep. She's a Māori Affairs correspondent, and now she's the Māori advisor for University of Auckland. Now National is in government. I think anytime there is a government, which is all the time, accountability in media plays a crucial role in society. News Hub is shutting down. TVNZ is shutting down. I contacted Melissa Lee. She rejected my interview, and I was like, you're the Minister for Communications, and it's not your duty to determine whether content is going to be entertaining or not,
Sure.
but it is her duty to help mobilize this industry and help provide opportunity for it. I haven't heard any, inside word on what her plan is for media. Do you have any insight of what National's response is to the current struggling New Zealand media?
Yeah, so I don't know in terms of on behalf of the party, I wouldn't know, but I would say that I did see Minister Lee's response that went out, and I had a bit of a chuckle when I read it too. But for me, when the way I read it is thinking, well, she's kind of right. If she's just going to answer the same questions and give the same answers, it's actually going to be quite boring. Please see the last press release. I was a bit kind of like, well, yeah, good on you for kind of going, actually, it's going to be the same information. I don't have anything for you today that I would have had yesterday or the day before. I don't even have anything around tomorrow. So, it's not popular, but I think, in her mind, she's just like, I've got to be head down to try to help the public broadcasting space navigate itself as it's on a very fragile state. We look at News Hub, and lots of people have had lots of conversations around them as a business and them collapsing. Oh my god, what are we going to do? I'm just like, well, the world has moved on past the traditional kind of format, right? So you think about 6 p.m. news comes on at 6 p.m. It is designed for you to sit in a chair and watch, right? Or sit around the table while you're having dinner and watch. That's what it's designed for to do. I don't know anyone at least in Auckland that is at home at 6 p.m. Unless you're not working. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, most of us are stuck either in traffic or just finishing work. Someone had said to me the other day, oh, but you can watch them on 3 Live. I said, so you want me to use my mobile device while I'm driving my vehicle? Albeit it's about 10 Ks an hour, but, that's illegal too. Can't do that.
Yeah.
That's distracted driving. So it seems like their ability to try to keep up with the market and the way we consume information has just been a bit on the miss side. And then, of course, advertisers is what spend is where the money is coming from. The majority of the money is coming from.
We did have a discussion about that. There needs to be more focus of transitioning to digital, and making things more accessible online.
Yep.
It's our phones now. People are on their phones, so that's super fine. That transition, and News Hub should have been quicker. They could have been better prepared for the digital age, and they should have prepared for that the last 9 to 10 years.
Yep.
And I guess that's something that Melissa Lee, our Minister of, is it communications? She's
in broadcasting.
Broadcasting, yep. So she needs to have at least those plans. Like if we're forward thinking, if we're thinking about the future, okay, TV's coming down. Let's have a plan to get digital. Let's have a plan to make an impact globally on the social media space, YouTube, whatever it is. But those are just my thoughts on it.
I think just in that regard, because she's the shareholding minister for TVNZ, right? And I think the state-owned enterprise, I could be wrong, but nonetheless, being in the minister, they're all restricted from interfering from the day-to-day aspect of things, because yes, it's government owned. We own the majority of shares there, and there's an expectation they return on that investment to the shareholders, right? So I think she's done okay in terms of just getting the expectation out, going, hey, it's just not good enough. You're not moving quick enough. You're not doing what you need to do. I do wonder in terms of the kind of content that TVNZ is choosing to cut. Is whether or not that's the appropriate stuff to cut. And when someone said, oh, we're going to shrink the news to 30 minutes, I thought, well, that's kind of when everyone had stopped watching news, right? Because you watch it for all the big headlines and that. As soon as the weather comes on, which is about halfway through.
And it can be a title now just on an article. Well, it always has been, but it's easier to access news. So I do agree.
It's definitely a flexible space, and it will continue to be very flexible. And, I think, now is probably the greatest opportunity for some of the smaller outlets, especially the outlets who are in the Pacific space and other ethnic spaces. That I really think this opens up a mass opportunity for them to step in. If we look at the stats, according to Stats New Zealand, in the next 12, 13 years, ethnic people will be the majority of this country. And one of the interesting groups who've adapted really well to ensure that their community is connected and then their platforms are moving and shifting are the Chinese community and the Indians community. So if 20 years ago they said, oh, we're going to have this one channel for the Chinese and we're going to have multiple after that. Yet people in TVNZ at the time that I know who were there when they were bringing that in had laughed and said, what?
What?
now, I mean, I think there's about 3 or 4 channels of Chinese content, which I watch my Chinese dramas. Not that I know what's going on, but I just read the subtitles really quickly.
Yeah.
But but they've connected that to their online platforms and everything else. So I just think that us ethnic people, we move quicker. We're a lot more agile, and I think Pacific. And media entities like Bluwave and others have a perfect opportunity to step right in. And I think that's where Melissa Lee will come in very handy, because she's also the Minister for Ethnic Peoples.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, John. John will be joining us very often now that national government is in, they are leading New Zealand, and we want to be engaged. We want to understand where the government is heading and how our audiences respond to that. Sure. So for the next time you come on, I'm going to have questions like from our audience on what they want to know.
Yeah, sure.
As someone who is Pacific as international, and this is foreign for a lot of people. I know I'm focusing on it a lot, but I want to bridge that gap.
Yep.
And moving forward, so people can be engaged in politics and understand what's going on currently. But thank you so much, John, for coming onto our show. Thank you for answering these questions that everyone is freaking out over, and bringing some sort of reasonableness into this. But do you have any last words for our audience?
Come and join us at the Pacific Blues. We're a happy bunch of people. Many of you probably already know many of our members, and it's nothing scary. We usually talk politics and we talk family, and then we break out food and we have lots of laughs, and we have those challenging conversations, and then we record it all, and then we send it upline. And as far as trying to influence the government to ensure that our voices are heard, we're the perfect group placed right now to speak to the Minister of Pacific Peoples and a direct line to the Prime Minister and most of the cabinet as well. So if you're thinking, hey, how do we have Pacific representation and influence in the government today without MPs in office? It's actually the Pacific Blues, the National Party. Come and join us, and let's Taliaoa.
Amazing. Get in contact with John. We will have his contact details available in this video. And if you want to be in that space, you want to make a change, you want to be part of politics, this is the guy to see. Have a great afternoon. Breaking Waves.